Low Earth orbit is filling up, fast. This band of space is the most commercially valuable real estate in the solar system. It is where the vast majority of our telecommunications, weather monitoring, and observation satellites operate. But it is also a finite physical environment. Physicists refer to its absolute structural limit as orbital carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the exact mathematical threshold for how many fast-moving objects a specific orbital shell can safely hold before the traffic becomes unmanageable. The rapid deployment of commercial megaconstellations has created a population explosion currently overwhelming this capacity. More satellites have entered orbit in the last few years than in the entire 6 preceding decades of space exploration combined. Those active satellites share orbital pathways with over 130 million fragments of untracked dead legacy debris, traveling at speeds up to 54,000 kilometers per hour. If the density of these objects breaches the carrying capacity, it triggers a chain reaction known as the Kessler syndrome. This is a mathematical tipping point, where collisions create more debris, which causes further collisions, eventually making the entire orbit unusable. Space is a fragile physical environment, approaching its absolute structural limit. The space industry's preferred response to this crisis is a multi-million-dollar engineering initiative called active debris removal. Agencies and private startups are developing hardware to clean up the orbits, deploying robotic capture arms, massive space nets, and even targeted lasers to deorbit defunct spacecraft. The entire investment strategy rests on a straightforward assumption: physically pulling dead hardware out of the sky will relieve the congestion. But recent dynamic physical-economic modeling of the space sector reveals a severe flaw in that assumption. If we deploy active debris removal without restructuring the underlying financial incentives of the market, the cleanup effort will actually accelerate the rate of new satellite launches and increase orbital congestion. A self-sustaining debris cascade is the physical manifestation of a failed market incentive structure. The modern space industry operates under an economic condition known as open access. No one owns the orbital pathways. Building a satellite and contracting a launch vehicle costs millions of dollars, but once a company files the paperwork, the actual orbital real estate where that satellite will operate is entirely free. This creates a market distortion known as an unpriced negative externality. When a company launches a satellite, that asset generates direct private profit for its owner. However, simply by occupying space, it also emits an expanding radius of collision risk to everything around it. The operator keeps 100% of the financial reward, while the costs associated with that collision risk are distributed to every other operator sharing the orbital shell. If you look at the corporate financial ledgers, this externalized risk is completely unaccounted for. The cost of polluting the orbit registers as zero. Because there is no financial penalty for leaving a dead satellite in orbit, operators have a strong incentive to free-ride. They systematically underinvest in post-mission disposal and debris mitigation to save on fuel and hardware costs. That exact same lack of consequence guarantees that companies will continue to overlaunch new satellites, knowing they will never have to pay for the congestion they create. We have seen this exact pattern before on Earth. It is the exact same dynamic that drives the overfishing of open oceans and unregulated industrial air pollution. In an open-access orbital commons, highly rational, profit-seeking behavior by individual companies guarantees collective systemic ruin. To test how active debris removal would perform under these open-access conditions, researchers at the University of Colorado Boulder built a coupled physical-economic model of low Earth orbit. They programmed an aggressive simulation. What happens if a government steps in and successfully removes 50% of all existing orbital debris, completely free of charge to the operators? Look at the dashed lines in the bottom two charts, showing collision risk and total debris. When the cleanup begins in 2029, both metrics experience a sharp, immediate drop. The orbit gets safer. But look at the top left chart tracking new launches. Exactly as the risk drops, the dashed red line representing total launches experiences a massive spike. This is a classic economic rebound effect. Artificially lowering the collision risk reduces operational costs, which suddenly makes launching additional satellites highly profitable again. Seeing newly cleared real estate and lower insurance risks, commercial operators respond to the market signal by rapidly deploying massive new fleets to consume the available capacity. As you trace those dashed lines out toward the year 2040 on the right, you see the result. The total debris and collision risk lines merge right back up to the critical open access trajectory. Physically cleaning the orbit simply induces economic demand. We end up replacing old legacy junk with new, active congestion. The economic mechanism designed specifically to correct open access externalities is a Pigovian tax. Applied to space, this takes the form of an orbital use fee. Instead of giving away orbital real estate for free, regulators charge operators an annual rent for consuming orbital carrying capacity. The fee relies on a strict physical algorithm. It calculates the specific orbital stress a satellite causes by factoring its altitude, its physical cross-sectional area, and its maneuverability. By attaching a dollar value to that physical stress, the fee shifts corporate behavior. It forces operators to internalize their own collision risk directly onto their balance sheets. This chart projects the exact trajectory of that optimal fee over the next 2 decades. Because the orbits will continue to fill, the value of that space increases over time. The model calculates that the optimal fee must escalate by roughly 14% annually, reaching $235,000 per satellite year by 2040. When the physical void carries a price tag, operators immediately optimize for orbital efficiency and lifespan, choosing fewer, more capable satellites rather than blindly pursuing launch volume. The industry's immediate counterargument is predictable. Won't a massive new tax destroy commercial revenue and innovation? Chart A compares industry valuation under open access versus a use fee. The bottom black line shows open access choking net present value at $600 billion. The rising upper lines show the fee preserving orbital viability, allowing value to skyrocket to $3 trillion by 2040. Implementing these fees protects the long-term utility of our orbits, raising the industry's valuation from a $600 billion cap to a projected $3 trillion. Implementing this economic theory globally requires a practical policy architecture, outlined in a recent proposal called the Orbital Tollway Framework. Look at the left side of this diagram. It leaves less congested bands of space free to incentivize fleet dispersal. However, operators in the highly congested low Earth orbit zones on the right must pay a mandatory annual toll. To prevent regulatory loopholes, the toll links to international radio frequency allocations. No toll, no broadcast data. Look at the diagram's bottom loop. The framework includes a deposit refund mechanism, allowing operators to recoup massive fees by successfully deorbiting hardware. The unrefunded fees from active satellites, alongside fines collected from abandoned hardware, are pooled together. These funds provide the financial incentive needed to finally subsidize the active debris removal market and clean up legacy junk. Engineering provides the physical tools to deorbit satellites, but market economics ensures that newly cleared space is not immediately occupied by new debris.